I'm Kevin Davis, and this is the Catholic Family Podcast. And as always, we're happy to have you joining us here for this show. And we're happy to be joined by a big part of the Catholic Family Podcast. He's been doing his own show for months now. Or it's how fast things go. It's just unbelievable how fast things go. It's like I feel like we were just talking about, hey, let's do a show on the Catholic Family Podcast. And it's already 3 months, 4 months. It's unbelievable. I do these shows with Matt on Mondays, and we've been doing it for like 2 years. What happens to time?
Oh my goodness! I remember when those started.
I know, I did too. That was 2 years ago. We've been doing it, or not quite two. I mean, a year and 2/3 or something. Unbelievable. But we love everyone who comes and watches. If it's your first one, if it's your 10th or your 100th, we really appreciate it, and we appreciate everyone who comes by, especially only when you see Dominic, his name and what he does. He does the divine poetry. He has a book. He has other exciting things we're going to talk about soon. New books that he's writing, a publishing company, a lot of really cool stuff, which we'll approach here maybe sometime during the show at the end. Really exciting stuff, which again, everyone who knows, if you hear us talk about it, you know how we are all about doing things, making things, writing things, building things. That's so important. And today, though, we wanted to talk about a really interesting topic. So I know Dominic is as interested or more as I am in politics and history. And well, if you can combine both of them, and you're right, politics, history, and kind of the divine poetry. I think that's really the best way to say it. I think that you can't get a whole lot more fascinating. And I think, again, as we always say with these shows, these are Dominic's opinions based on his research. So this is not like you don't have to go be worried about this. If you're stressed about it or if it upsets you, go talk to a priest about it. But again, it is, it's research. So I think take it for what it is. I always appreciate it, and we hope that you do too. So we're going to talk about Donald Trump, Nero, Israel, Palestine. I mean, pretty heavy stuff, Dominic. So after that long intro, I'll send it over to you. I mean, what exactly are we talking about today?
It's the big headline news items most of the time. You have the American political landscape right now with Trump on trial, convicted. Biden snickering when he asked about the trial. Remember, so that episode, right? But also you have this, I guess you call it a massacre, but I don't know how you come down on the war. I think most people here would recognize that what's going on over there is not a fair fight. I'm not here to pick a side. I don't think. I mean, obviously, the Jews and the Muslims both deny Christ, but that conflict over there, the Gaza-Israel conflict, also has these parallels in the same time as Nero did. So I guess let me start off by saying that if you might have already seen, I have a divine poetry series on Kevin's YouTube channel, right? And as he mentioned, I think I've done 3 months worth. I just did number 17. I'm on number 18 now, and I do one every Tuesday. So it's 18 weeks worth. But in video number 10, if you go back and look at it, you can see that I did one on Donald Trump and President Biden and how they are paralleling the time of Nero in 66, 67, 68 AD. And I probably should preface this first with the little the idea that if what are you talking about paralleling? So I did write a book called Divine Poetry, and this book shows the chronological parallels between the entire Old Testament and how they, like I said, chronologically parallel the church history of the New Testament, in lockstep order, all the way from the very beginning to our present day. But as part of that system of parallels, you have these non-Catholic or these in the Old Testament, non-Israeli entities. Like, for instance, in the Old Testament, you have the Babylonians, the Persians, the Greeks, and they have parallels with non-Catholic governments and things like that in church history. So as a consequence, Rome, which was a major player at the end of the Old Testament, is paralleling the history of the Western political world, mostly America. I have another video on my YouTube channel, which you go to MaccabeanUprising.com, and I'll put the link here below, or the name of the site. And it shows amazingly, right, that America started out as a colony, and it went through its whole history until our present day in chronological order with Rome. So they both started out as a colony. They both had a period of kings, and they both had an expansion period. And then they had internal conflicts, and they had world wars. And all this is happening in order with high degrees of detail. And then you had your Julius Caesar period, your Cleopatra, your Mark Antony, your Augustus Caesar. And now we are in the Nero period in terms of American politics. So I can go through, I guess, some of those things with Nero and Biden, but I guess I don't want to go too much because I want to talk about the Israeli Gaza conflict as well. So does that kind of set up a...
No,
Yeah.
totally. No, it makes sense. And now it's interesting to think of how Biden is playing the fiddle. I know that that's not probably the actual history. That's what we always hear, but it's interesting to think about that. While Rome burns, I think it was more like, he was probably involved, probably was the one who said, if not, he was just kind of, oh, well, whoops, okay, let's blame it on the Christians. But I'm really curious to see how this ends up together. And it is exactly as you said. However you come into Israel-Palestine issues, it is the topic I think going on right now. So I'm very curious to see how that connects with the past.
Perfect. You brought up Rome fire, so that's a great place to start, because you can keep on going back. The Roman fire happened in 64 AD, and you mentioned Nero is probably responsible for it. But if you go back further, I don't want to go back too much further because we can just keep on going back and back. Let's start with the Roman fire. That's a great place to start. So COVID seems to be like the Roman fire, but on a worldwide scale, and consider the parallels between them, right? So remember the Great Reset that we were hearing about, and that was the COVID Great Reset. Charles Schwab, or what's his name? Yes, Schwab and the Davos people. All right. So let's go back to Rome for a second. So Nero is suspected of starting the fire. He did so he could clear out the land in the city of Rome to build his new massive city. He wanted to take more land and more wealth for himself and leave the common people with less and less and less. And then, of course, after COVID, we heard about Build Back Better, right? So that's what Biden's motto was. So you already have in the world, like the whole Western world. I mean, yeah, you have the code was the Great Reset, and the elites did it. And as we found out afterwards, that they've gathered more wealth to themselves. Right? Like housing prices are more expensive. The rich got richer, the poor got poorer because of the COVID thing. It shut down most of the world's economy and it didn't recover in many sectors. So then you have the Build Back Better. Also, we have the fire was blamed on the Christians, and he needed a scapegoat. So the same thing with the unjab, right? Right. Sure. It's their fault. They're the ones who are responsible for this. But everyone kind of knew it was kind of ridiculous. Most people did, right? So, I guess some of the Romans believe the Christians started the fires, but I think a lot of them are kind of sympathetic to the idea. But also, just around that time, you had the fires all over America. Minneapolis burned down, and remember Trump said, "Listen, the liberals did it. Let them take care of it." And the liberals said, "You're just letting these cities burn to the ground. You're doing nothing when it's happening," right? Or the liberals will have accused Trump of doing nothing during the COVID time. But the point is, the conservatives will accuse Biden of not doing anything in other areas. But it's the era of watching things burn while you fiddle. So it's kind of all over the place, right? So there's the fire in many ways. Now you have the 15-minute cities. They were talking about those. The 15-minute cities is an effort to get more people in less space, so there's more room. Like, how about the thing in Hawaii, where the theory is that there was an intentional fire because the local Native American Indians who lived there had shacks up there, and the elites wanted the land to build resorts. It was prime real estate, right? Same thing. There's the Roman fire again. So it's all over the place. But on the global scale, it's kind of the COVID is the biggest manifestation of it on the global scale, So you go 4 years out from that. So that happened in 2020, 1920. 4 years out from that, now we have Trump on trial, right? And we also have Biden without any political errors. And we also have this perverse stuff happening in our social fabric, with all the transing and all that stuff like that. So all those things are Nero. Nero was sick, very sick. He killed his wife, Pompeia, and he found a young boy who looked like her, and then he transed, right? And so that's always reflected. Whatever the emperors do gets emulated by the sick Romans. So it was a very time of that. Nero was a singer and an actor, and that was considered very, very low class thing to do. And the elites hated Nero doing that, just like how Trump was a reality show star, and the elites hate that our president is a reality show star. That seems like to be like the common, commoner kind of entertainment, not for the elites to go to the operas and go to, musicals and whatever they do, Not that I wouldn't do to go to an opera, but you try to paint a general picture. All right. So in many ways, and I can't get into all of them because I don't have time, but there's a video, like I said, so go back on Catholic Family Podcast YouTube channel, Divine Poetry number 10, and I have a whole, like an hour, 25, 30-minute long video about Trump, Biden, and Nero. There's quite a bit. So where we are right now, it looks like, is they declared Nero an enemy of the state. And then they pulled his Praetorian Guard group. So all the emperors had a special group of guards, Praetorian guards, that guarded the emperor. They were an elite unit of Roman guards. They were the only army that were allowed to stand inside of the city of Rome, because all the other armies had to be outside of Rome. They did it on purpose to kind of keep Rome a place of not having violence. They could just have political discourse without having to bring swords into the thing. But anyway, here you have now the elites putting Trump on trial, calling him a convict, essentially saying you're an enemy of the state, right? You're destroying democracy, and that would be interesting to see if they pull a Secret Service detail once he gets sentenced, because that would be
They're trying.
In fact, they did,
trying.
right? Yeah, they're trying to do that. Now, on the other side of this, Biden also shares in this system, because it's not just Trump. It's like I've come to see it as like the age of Nero. So you see Nero all over the place. But so Biden he has no political heirs. That's why he's still there. I mean, everyone knows he's incompetent and he can't, poor fella. But he has no, so, is Gavin Newsom the heir? We don't know. But so Nero had no heirs. He had no offspring. And so that starts after Nero was deposed. It starts the year of 4 emperors, where there's no dynasty now that can assert its rule over Rome. So all these generals kind of come in and try to make themselves the new emperor. So you have the first one after Nero dies is Galba, and then Otho, and then Vitellius, and finally Vespasian. And I can get into that in a minute. And so I guess we'll see what happens. But the way these parallels work, it's always hard to predict the future, right? But you can see the general pattern. So all I'm saying is look for the year of 4 emperors in American history in some way. I don't know if it's going to be 4 presidents. I have no idea. And it should be on a global scale too. And I can say this so confidently because they've been going on the whole time. Like these parallels have just been going on since the beginning of church history, both inside the church and outside the church. So I guess hopefully I'm standing on solid ground to make these kind of predictions. It's hard not to think that they won't continue.
No, it's interesting. I've heard other podcasts recently talking about the 4th turning. I don't know. I think that's what it's called. I don't know if you've heard of that, but it's pretty much the idea that every 80 years or so, there's a cycle of how societies collapse and rebuild and collapse and rebuild. Or I know 80 years for war, I think collapses every 200, or I forget exactly what it was, but it's interesting. So that's even a worldly. So that's taking faith completely out of it. This is Joe Rogan type stuff, but they are even seeing that, hey, there is a cyclical nature to this stuff, that it's almost kind of, I don't know if bizarre is the right word, but it's something worth marking. It's kind of like that. There is a system here that has gone on before. And that's why it's so interesting to look into what you have studied, because it's not just, again, you're not just pulling it out of a hat. It's like, this is being noticed outside, by other people. You're just putting it in a very, very detailed, step-by-step process, which is really fascinating to watch. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's all, well. So the core of it though is the church. The church's history. That's really formed the nucleus. This Rome stuff is peripheral.
Right.
But it does matter at the end though, because I'll probably stop talking about Nero, because you can watch a video to watch the rest. But it matters at the end, because at the end of the year of 4 emperors, you have the last one standing, Vespasian. He comes in and destroys the Jewish temple in 70 AD. Mm-hmm. So that's very significant, because I'm just going to say this, right? But when our Lord was asked about the end of the world, oh man, can I just shut the door? They're mowing the lawn. Can you hear them mowing the lawn?
I just heard him go by. It's not too bad. But
I'll be real quick.
No problem. Yeah. You're the one editing, so it doesn't matter for me. Okay,
right. So when our Lord was asked about the end of the world by the apostles in the Gospel of St. Matthew, he starts talking about the destruction of Jerusalem. Right. And then I have not read, shamefully to my shame, I have not read Dom Garanger's The Liturgical Year. My wife has. She tells me about it. My friends here tell me about it all the time. It's wonderful. I know it is. I just have to get the time to do it, which is an excuse. Anyway, someone told me about how the lengthy explanation that he gave, how that prophecy about the destruction of Jerusalem is a dual prophecy. It was a prophecy both for 70 AD, but also for the end of the world as well. Mm-hmm. Right now, with the system of parallels we have right now, we can see who our Jewish temple would be. It's the Vatican, right? So just as the early Christians used to go to the temple because it was God's house, but then they denied Christ, so too did those who accepted Vatican II. They're now belonging to the system with the Vatican at its head that also has denied Christ in a reverse kind of way, but also is full of a false sacrifice. God's presence is no longer there. But they still think they're God's chosen people, just like the Jews in the Old Testament did, right? With the temple. So if we're approaching the year of 4 emperors in parallel, right? If we are at that point now in our current time, then it stands to reason that the destruction of the Vatican looming in the not so distant future. because it's the same. It's all the same thing, right? And okay. I guess I'll talk about my new book now because this is a good segue into it.
Sure.
And then I'll come back around and talk about the Israel-Gaza conflict, and then I can maybe do a quick about our new publishing company, which is pretty cool too.
Absolutely.
But okay, all right. So the new book I have, I'll put a picture on the screen right here. It's called Vatican II and Antichrist, or Antichrist and Vatican II. And so the idea is that I guess I'll start off with this. The parallels between church history and the Old Testament that I have in my book, Divine Poetry. When you get to the end of the Old Testament, the books of the Maccabees, that's where you see Vatican II paralleled. You see a Greek king comes into the temple, he strips all the ornaments out, he outlaws all traditional Old Testament practices, sacrifices, and he mandates new modern Greek ones. That all the world's doing these modern Greek things. He puts up a second altar in the temple over and against the altar of God. So there's this new second altar, just like in the Novus Ordo. And then on that second altar, he puts the abomination of desolation, which is both a statue of Jupiter, probably, or Zeus, but also it's a profane sacrifice to go with it. And there's more to it than that. But clearly, though, we have our second altar. They have second altars in our Catholic churches. And on that second altar is the Novus Ordo. They would never say it on the traditional altar, only on the second one. Now, that system of parallels linking the abomination with the Novus Ordo is nested inside of 2,000 years approximately of detailed parallel from start to finish. So it's like it's got a ton of context, right? So when our Lord says in the Gospel of St. Matthew, I believe it is, he says, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by the prophet Daniel in the holy place, you flee to the hills or the mountains. So the question always would have to be, well, what is the abomination? It's a good question. But I mean, now with these parallels front to back of church history, culminating with Vatican II and the books of the Maccabees, we have something that looks like there's a firm grasp. Like, oh, we can say that in the Novus Ordo. I've even heard traditional Catholic priests on video say the Novus Ordo is an abomination of desolation, or is the abomination of desolation. So like intrinsically, like we already just instinctively, we already know it is because it's so bad, right? But now we have this typological kind of like evidence to support that. Anyway, here's why I say that. Because our Lord says, go to the book of Daniel when you see it, right? So I went to the book of Daniel. And in the footnotes, all throughout the footnotes, there's like 9 places where it says, Antiochus, he's the Greek king that did this. Antiochus is the prefigurement for the Antichrist. Antiochus, Antichrist, Antiochus. It's like all over the place, okay? And so that's who they say. So therefore, I had to ask the question, is Vatican II and someone in there specifically the actual pinnacle fulfillment of Antichrist in like the highest sense, like the one we have all been dreading and waiting for? And so, this is what this book's about, right? Because when I have this abomination of desolation, a prefigurement, then I can go through and use dates, like real dates. We know about real dates of the Novus Ordo, like 1969, 1971. And those dates now you can plug into the prophecies and you can actually run them front to back and they actually are fulfilled. Now, the question is that the ultimate fulfillment or is this a minor fulfillment or is it something greater yet to come, as people have asked me, right? So the book will address all these things. There's a whole lot in here. The book of Daniel, all the prophecies in Daniel that talk about the Antichrist, I have all of them that show their fulfillments. And then, of course, that links up with the book of the Apocalypse because the books are linked structurally, right? And I show that how that all goes about too. There's a lot there. So anyway, that's the book. I'll just end it with this two things, right? I can already almost prove to you that Vatican II is the Antichrist with just appealing to Catholic theology, really. I mean, so as Catholics and only as traditional Catholics, we know more than anybody else where Christ literally is, like in the world. We know by faith that the mystical body of Christ, his actual body, is the Catholic Church, or like the Mass is like his sacrifice represented on our altars, or the Holy Eucharist is literally our Lord, body, blood, soul, and divinity, or the priest is an alter Christus, or the Pope is a vicar of Christ. So like the Catholic Church manifests Christ to us, like physically, really, truly. But no one else who doesn't have the faith, they can't see that, right? So they have to look for somebody or something that's going to come and impersonate Christ, yet also be opposed to Christ at the same time. They have to look for him externally because they wouldn't recognize the Catholic Church as what I just mentioned. But because we know that, then there can literally be no greater antichrist than an anti-church, an anti-pope, an anti-mass, a fake Holy Eucharist, anti-priest, because no one else. Let's even say, for the sake of argument, that some general or some world leader politician arises in the Middle East. He builds a third temple, and he does everything that everyone's expecting him to do, and he persecutes us horribly, and we all get tortured and died. Even if all that comes to pass, he still cannot be a greater Antichrist than what we see before us. Like, it's literally impossible because the theology tells us where Christ really is and who really would impersonate that. So, like, that's kind of like the premise of the book, is to shift the focus onto where Christ really is present and see how he's mocked and imitated and blasphemed from the very place that people believe is the actual Catholic Church. Yeah.
So I guess the one question I'd have isn't don't we, how do I say this, almost have to believe that the Antichrist is a person? Isn't that it is an actual person? And so 100%. I guess I don't know much about it, but that's the one thing I think I've heard before. Maybe a priest say that yes, it is surely going to be someone, and it's probably going to be someone to come from the Jewish faith. But I don't know if that's how sure that is.
They'll be Jewish. Yeah. So there's so much this. It's so much. It's always deeper. Yes, you're absolutely right. And I talk about that in the book because so Antiochus was the one who puts the abomination on the second altar. All right, we know who did that in church history, right? Or Antiochus is the one who puts the idol on the altar, or he's the one. There's so much this. If you want to do another podcast about this, I would love to, because it's way too much information to pack in now. But it all is going to be in the book.
Perfect.
And if you want to email me, I could try to like spill the beans right now. But the hard part is that if I just simply blurt out the answer, it's like, oh no, I have to show all of the mountains of evidence that builds up to it, because it's really a building process, and it's not just something you can just say in 3 seconds. It's not convincing in 3 seconds.
You got me interested. I think that's exactly what you needed to do, right? So that was a good pitch for the book. And so when I guess that the obvious question is when is it going to be published, and where can people buy it?
All right, good. Thank you. So I'm still writing it. I'm about 2/3 of the way through. I have all the meat and potatoes now, and I'm just kind of putting like the vegetables on the side, or but it should be ready by the end of the summer. I should be done writing it hopefully in like a week or two, and then have some very good editors help us, and we could pay you, anyone out there who's interested. And then it takes two weeks to come in. So once I order it, it takes 2 weeks to come in. So yeah, but if you want to sign up for a copy, or if you want to pre-order a copy, either way, I mean, pre-order means you would pay for it in advance, or sign up means you just put your name down, and I'll contact you when it's done. Then you can do it that way. But just go to this website on the screen. I'll put the website right here on the screen. You go there, and you can either sign up or pre-order, and then it'll be ready. But in the meantime, maybe before it actually comes out, maybe we can have a podcast ready in the next month or two or something like that. If great.
Yeah, absolutely. You know how much I appreciate these types of things. Again, it's fascinating. Yeah. And I would also recommend to everyone, I think you guys have a Patreon channel as well. Actually, I'm sure you do. So I'd also recommend everyone to do that. Please go support, because it's obviously it helps to buy the books, because, well, first of all, you're going to read it and enjoy it, but it also helps to, that these, those of us trying to create good Catholic content, it does help to just know, hey, I'm getting, $5 a month from this person. And it's seriously, it's $5 a month, that's awesome. That is seriously, for me, it's like, hey, that's great. If I get $5 a month from 10 people, that's nice. That really does help. It helps, buy the ink pen, the ink and the quill, or whatever. So,
exactly. You're right. Exactly. Yeah. It puts electricity in the computer or whatever. Yeah, exactly. 100%. Yeah. I mean, yes, exactly. Yes, please. I mean, I would have to say, of course, I would appreciate that. 100%. And we're trying to make a go at this, to see, if we can swing a living off of it. I mean, I don't think that's going to be all. It can't do it by itself, but we have other things going that aren't related to our publishing company and all these things. But I sure would appreciate that. Yeah, for sure. 100%.
So do you want to talk about the publishing company after, right? So I guess let's get back into Israel.
Okay, sure. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Oh, by the way, we're like at 25 minutes. If you're keeping track, I'm kind of watching, but
yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Okay. So contemporaneous to Nero being deposed was the start of the Roman Jewish War in the Holy Land. And that was in 66 AD. So it actually started before they started taking down Nero. So in our time, we have the start of this conflict, I guess you call it a conflict, between Hamas and Israel. And that started in October 7th, right? The date now is, everyone knows it, 2023. And so I do have a video about this as well. And there's a lot more detail that I probably could go through here. But in essence, what's happening is that, so, okay, I guess for the traditional Catholics, and even those who aren't traditional Catholic, who are who've suspected who's pulling the strings behind the scenes with finances and politics and war, it's usually this very specific group of people that start with a certain letter, that, you know what I'm trying to say, right? Like, you know, I don't want to say the word and get your channel blocked, right? But right, okay. But so they're kind of like behind the scenes. I mean, it's actually all over the news. Like the APAC, was it APAC? Is the people all is the I think it's APAC. It's the lobbying group that lobbies politicians in Washington to be pro-Israel, right? Mm-hmm. So APAC is like, you know, like pulling a lot of strings in Congress. Implication is that there's a lot of behind the scenes manipulation from a certain demographic, so to speak, right? So really the country of Israel is not just an isolated country. It really has underwater, underground connections with big, powerful organizations that aren't on the surface, but nonetheless it's like the sequoia trees. Like a sequoia tree looks like it's just one tree, but I've heard that the root system's all connected underneath, right? So like, anyway, the point I'm trying to make here is that Israel is very powerful, not just because they have a good military over in the Middle East, but because they have a lot of influence with governments in the Western world. Okay, let's say it, right? Leave that alone. So as a consequence, this war with Hamas, this conflict with Hamas and Israel, is mirroring the Roman-Jewish war in parallel. Except the amazing part is that for the Israel, the roles have switched. So, of course, in the Old Testament, Israel was the one being, or the Jews were ones being destroyed by the Romans. Now they're the destroyers, and they're doing everything to Hamas in Palestine that the Romans did to Jerusalem in 70 AD. It's really amazing. So, like, even the start of the thing, on October 7th, when Hamas ambushed Israel, that happened in the Roman-Jewish conflict as well. There was a place called Beth Horon in it's like in Galilee, I think, and off by the coast. Well, the Jews ambushed the Romans and decimated them, took their standard, their eagle away, their military symbol, and they brought it back to Jerusalem. And that's what got the Romans to just bring all of the big guns, like, you know, a couple of years later. And they just wiped out northern Israel, Galilee. Right? Vespasian led the troops in, and it was horribly bloody. That's where you have Josephus comes onto the scene first in that siege up there, which I'm still waiting for him to happen in our time. But so then there's I shouldn't get into all the parallels here, but I'll give some highlights. Okay, so in those conflicts, the Jews always had tunnels. They were very famous for their tunnel warfare, and that's what Hamas has. Okay. Israel or Rome starved out. They built a wall of circumvallation around Jerusalem, and they literally starved out. They wouldn't let any supplies in. That's in the news all the time, right? We have the death toll was so high, the atrocity is so high in that conflict with Jerusalem and Rome. That's what's happening right now. And so the end game for Rome was to destroy that temple, the Jewish temple, because it was going to be a center for upcoming Jewish revolts. They would all rally around the temple. But the Romans also were known, they had a reputation of being respectful of other world religions, especially great acts of big architectural marvels like the Jewish temple, the beauty, all of the ethnicity. They liked all the cultural stuff. The Romans liked that kind of stuff. So they couldn't have been seen to have destroyed the temple outright. So they have Josephus, who is a Jew turned traitor to the Romans. He writes the history, right? So in his history says it was an accident. It didn't mean to be destroyed. But you could see the parallel here. What would the Jews in Israel want to destroy right now that they couldn't admit to on the world stage? It would be that Al-Aqsa Mosque, right? That's where the third temple. They want that third temple because they have these, right? Yeah, right. They have those nationals there, like on the military board. They have a Smoltrich as one, Itaman Ben Gavir. They're classified as quote far right, but they're religiously motivated Israelites who are fighting this war not from a secular point of view. They want to reestablish the religious untruths that they want to assert, but they want that third temple built, and they've said it many times in smaller interviews, not in the main press. Anyway, so that's where we are, right? But here's the key point is that this is happening contemporaneous with Trump Biden, which is the Nero, right? So all these things in the Old Testament time, or not in the ancient Roman times, are happening now in parallel. I'm waiting for some kind of link to show how the Vatican's going to be taken down in all this, because the stuff happening in Israel-Gaza is not really, it's a peripheral story in the sense of it's not related to the Catholic Church, right? That Vatican is the great harlot from the apocalypse, I believe. I don't know how it couldn't be. And so it has to be destroyed, and it would have to mirror the Old Testament Jerusalem destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD. So we'll see how that goes down. Anyway, that's a nutshell. And I bring this up as a topic to talk about because now there's a framework now to see these things. It's not like we have to be scared in the sense of like there's a pattern to adhere to and to look at. And I would advise people to start looking into the conflict with Rome and the Jews, read into Nero, and see for yourselves when things start to happen, as they unfold. You yourselves can go, oh, look, I can see now. Like it gives you a little more clarity of thought, to not feel like you're just a piece on, like you're just not being flicked around by the globalists all the time. Like there's something God's done that's bigger than the globalists, is what my point is, right? So like, yeah. Well, they're the ones getting played. Yeah.
Yeah. And to know history is they always say to not repeat it, try not to repeat it. And we don't have a whole lot to say in probably what's going to happen through history. I mean, we're kind of small fish. I mean, that's it.
Right.
Just kind of how it works. But I think it is good to know. And I think, again, what I say this every show we do, that I think what is good is that I think you could look at all of this and, you're just looking for the end of the world. Just when's the end of the world? When's it going to come? That's all I care about. That's the end. But that's not what you do. And I think that's right. A good thing. It's not just this focus on, okay, where are my 3 days of darkness candles type thing? Because we know that there are people who do that. And it's I think to a point it's okay, but I think it can be a very dangerous thing, because you forget your own spirituality, you forget the actual point, right? Yeah. We're all just here to go to heaven. Yeah. But I think, again, it's such a valuable thing to know our history and to just kind of understand the basics of where we are in the world. I mean, I'm doing a show this week about patriotism and about politics and just kind of being aware of it and understanding it enough so that you can talk to the younger people who might be voting for the first time and help them a bit. And I think this type of stuff is really helpful for that. I think really you can really understand, have a better grasp of social politics. Just how does it work? What happens? And then that's not even talking about the mirroring. Obviously that's a whole nother step where you can say I can understand it. But I mean, literally just if you just read history, you can understand. Oh, this is what happens when men have too much power. This is what happens when et cetera. And I think that's a really valuable thing that I think we need to start making sure the younger people, and you got kids who are growing up. You get an 18-year-old, right? Your oldest is around that age.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So his first voting will be this year, right? His first, I would guess.
18. Yeah, it would be. Yeah,
assuming he's going to vote. Yeah. So it's at least something to be informed, to be like, hey, and I think, again, that's to me, that's a big deal. And I think that's
of course it is. Yeah, of course. It'd be, my goodness, the more you know, the more correct information you know, the better, without a doubt. And for the kids to learn that this is not really unique. Powerful men, corrupt men, evil men have done the same things, with different tools and different weapons, but it's still the same. It's just evil. You stick close to, you totally emulate and you totally absorb and you totally love the teachings of the Catholic Church, and you let those be your guiding lights, and you let those kind of like be, you become one with like the mind of the church, so that no matter what situation presents itself, you have the mind of the church to kind of, and you pray, right? God, like, show me, how do I come to this situation or this situation? How do I get, knowing history though will give you such a depth of a perspective that gives you. Yep.
No, exactly. And I think, as you said too, I mean, Christ also when he, I always wondered about that part of the gospel where he's talking about the fall of Jerusalem, and it's really confusing. And I think it must have been, maybe it was one of your shows, I don't remember, a sermon where someone explained it. And it's like, okay, yeah, it made sense. It has to be, Christ must be kind of saying two things at once. It's like almost like this part's for Jerusalem, this part's for the end of the world. But they're kind of connected. It's really fascinating. And I think, again, it shows you that, Christ is also maybe giving us a hint that don't obsess about these things, but also, it is, he did warn us about it. These things would happen. I mean, look at the apocalypse too. I mean, that is in the Bible, and it's it is worthwhile, and I think it is worth considering and trying to understand more. But I think again, as we'd both say, don't let it overcome you. Don't let it become your this darkness in your mind of the end of the world. Which again, I know you don't, but
right, well, and it's actually like what I'm bringing, what this book's about, with my understanding and my ideas here, it's actually good news, not bad news, because I think when you think at the end of the world, we dread the idea of how bad it will be, but if the worst is behind us, then that's good news, right? Like, it's like if Vatican II was, well, first of all, I've heard many priests say that Vatican II is the worst persecution the church has ever withstood. It was just a bloodless one.
Right.
So we just went through the worst persecution the church has ever had. Like, that's, I probably could go through and dig through old videos of priests saying that. I probably could find a couple. I think I remember hearing it before. But so there we go. Like, so now the question is, does that all tie in together with prophecy and everything else? And that's what my book's trying to do, is show you that it's actually all integrates. And I make the case that, like, I don't see how it couldn't be that we just went through the worst. So it's actually good news, not bad news. I know it looks like really bad times are coming right now, and I think everyone recognizes that. I mean, it looks like really dark clouds are coming, but it's only worldly. Like, we've kept the faith amazingly through, like, the great apostasy, So that's, I mean, it's horrible for those that didn't. That's where the bad news is. Anyway, okay, I'm sorry, but yeah. So right on. I agree. You can dwell on this stuff too much. But if you want to be encouraged, then maybe my book's for you.
So. No, it's fascinating, and I think again, it's helpful. It's helpful to be informed and to learn about the past, and again, I think and then it's interesting to connect it with what's going on now. It's very interesting, and it is. And again, it's something I'm interested in anyway. I'm watching what's going on with Israel and wondering what is it's very bizarre. It's very strange. And I think that and it's really odd that Israel, because even now in America, who we're their best buddies, they're losing Americans. I mean, like, big time. Americans are like, hey, enough. You can say, hey, we're trying to wipe out Hamas and all these other things, but man, you better cool it off, or you're going to lose all of your world support. It's pretty interesting.
True. Yeah,
I think Hamas did it on purpose. I think Hamas poked the bear there. I mean, it makes sense. They knew it was going to happen. They're like, hey, they're going to overreact and kill all the civilians, and so they're like, okay, poke the bear, which and what they did was horrific. Of course, I mean, that's it's not like I'm saying Hamas is good for goodness sake. And I think this is again this Hegelian dialectic, right, where it's like, okay, well, it has to be one of them. Is like, well, no, they're both bad. I mean, that's pretty clear, I think, and they're both obviously not being run by godly motives, maybe religious motives, but certainly not godly. And I think that's I guess that's where we'll see where does it go. I mean, it's you have two of the biggest religions in the world, going at it, and if it comes down to who's going to knock down whose temple or mosque,
I know,
oof, man, you're talking about pretty heavy stuff. And but maybe
that's apocalyptic kind of stuff. It's the big stuff. It really is. I would agree. Yeah, I totally agree. It's big stuff. I agree. Israel has nowhere to. They have no exit ramp. Like, it's just like, Gaza is so destroyed that even if they stop now, people can't live there. I mean, so it's almost like they have to finish you don't have to. This is a horrible thing to say, but like, from their point of view, I think they feel like they have to finish it off and drive them out completely.
Yeah,
is what I'm thinking.
Yeah. And I think that's what that I think, again, from a worldly perspective, I think that's what they're going to do. That then they're going to fire everyone. No more Netanyahu. Everyone's going to be gone from the leadership, and then it's going to be new leadership, and they're going to be like, well, wasn't us. We didn't do it. It was this guy who. He's terrible, and that's what they're going to do. And honestly, probably in 5 years, no one's even going to remember, unless someone burns down the mosque or the temple, and then you're starting to or they build the third temple. I mean, but there's a lot of that weird stuff with the red heifers and all that. There's some weird stuff going on that I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's just a normal thing that they do, but it doesn't seem like it. It seems like there is a push towards something bigger, and that's why, again, it's interesting to look into what happened in the past, and it's
there's so much to this. Yeah. Like, I mean, I'm getting into my video, I talk about all this in detail, but so Vespasian, when he defeats the temple, when he destroys the temple in 70 AD, he uses the gold he plunders from the temple to build the Colosseum in Rome. So the Colosseum in Rome is funded by the destruction of the Jewish temple. And if you go to right beside the Colosseum, there's this Arch of Titus, and he depicts on the side of the arch the Romans carrying away all the vessels from the Jewish temple. Now, what's weird about this is cool is that during the Renaissance, when they were building St. Peter's Basilica, a cheap and easy way to find a lot of blocks was the Colosseum. So if you go and see it says partially deconstructed, it's only like partly there. That's because they used it to build St. Peter's Basilica with. So like in a roundabout way, some parts of St. Peter's Basilica were funded by the destruction of the temple in 70 AD. So I'm just kind of wondering, like, if the Vatican seems like through these parallels has to be knocked down, destroyed, or whatever, that when they well, first of all, I think that the primary way that's going to happen is they're going to revoke the Lateran Treaty. Right now the Europeans just had a major election and it went very populist, right? Like the ADF made some very sweeping gains in Germany, and Giorgia Meloni picked up a lot of good stuff in Italy. And
France is a catastrophe.
France is a catastrophe,
Macron.
right?
Yeah, I mean, good in a good way. Yeah, a good catastrophe. Yeah.
100%. So like the populists are gaining control in Europe. So if Francis in Rome keeps on talking about open borders, the pressure might be on for Giorgia Meloni to yank that Lateran Treaty. The Lateran Treaty is what gives the Vatican sovereign state status, and they can hide all their horrible crimes behind their sovereignty. But if Italy pulls the treaty, then they got nothing. And that would constitute the destruction of the harlot, more so than just the physical destruction of the building, right? But the Vatican bank's presumably full of some money. If that gets liquidated, maybe the Jews would want it for their third temple. I don't know. But if they do, then you have this complete circle of the temple funding the Colosseum, building St. Peter's Basilica, and then that goes back to fund the third temple again. It's in my video. That's pure speculation. It has no basis in parallels, but I just couldn't help myself because it seems so poetic, which okay, I should shut up. But that's just complete speculation. But yeah,
it's interesting though. But again, yeah, I think that's what's fascinating about this is that you have the balance between what is research, what is study, what can you really connect and say, hey, look, this really looks really similar, and then sometimes you can just have a bit of fun with it. But I think that's kind of what it's about. Because I think it gives you this idea of critical thinking. It makes you think, how is it connected? That's an interesting thing. It doesn't mean it's going to happen, but
right.
I think that's a good little bit of knowledge to have, and it does maybe make you think about, okay, what is going on, what is happening with the Lateran Treaty. It's I never thought about that. Now I'm going to ponder the Lateran Treaty, and that's a good thing. Thank you, Dominic.
Yeah, you're welcome.
No, I appreciate it. So let's end the show. I'm really trying to push my shows to 45 minutes. All of them.
Good. Yeah, I like it.
Everyone who's watching, I know that the shows tend to go long. I'm really trying to fix that to make it so that our shows are around 45 minutes. It's harder than you would think, but it's still the goal because I think people see an hour long. It's like, oh my goodness, that's too long. So tell us about the publishing company.
Right, great. So to go along with our cartoons, we have Glorious Heritage Books. We're going to republishing old books out of copyright status. They're in the public domain. We have a website coming soon. It's probably not going to be up by the time this video is up. So for now, you can just go to Maccabean Uprising and get the books there. But very soon, we'll have a website dedicated to that. We just put out a book, A Year with the Saints. And you might know it by the name, what's it called? Lauren's going to kill me. There's another name for this book. I can't remember. I'll put it on the screen when I edit the video. We had a very good success. We just published it, republished it, I guess, from the public domain point of view. And we had almost like 80 to 100 orders. It's very popular, I guess. Cool. Apparently, we're very happy about that. Great. And we're also doing Great Wives and Mothers. And we have also a book about Our Lady of Good Counsel, which I know your mom loves, and we actually love very much too. There was a book published in late 1800s with these beautiful old pictures from the time, and we're able to republish the whole thing. It's the story of how they followed the icon across the Adriatic Sea and all this stuff, how it went to Genazzano and all that. So anyway, the point is that we want to be doing these old books. We're going to putting out maybe 1 or 2 a month, and we're going to make them affordable, right? So if you try to find these ones from a long time ago, it's like $50-$60 for the original copy. You'll have the same information, but it's going to be a republished work for $15 or whatever.
Well, I'll have to send you. I've got up here behind me a 3-volume. I thought we had 4. 3-volume of Reverend Butler's Lives of the Saints, and so this is not that. This is the unabridged. So usually people get the abridged version. That's like this. This is what. So I've actually talking about plugging some. I have a channel that I did before starting this podcast called Butler's Lives of the Saints, and I recorded almost every day of the year. Some of them are over an hour long, so they're they're pretty intense, and they're pretty dry, to be honest. But some people like that. Some people like the dry, information-filled stories, and he has a lot of info. But stuff like that, I'm not saying to do that literally, but it's an interesting thing because there's so many of these books that we just happen to find that online at I think it was an old Nova Sort of seminary in England.
Wow.
And it was like, hey, and the price was pretty okay. We're like, hey, let's get it. That's awesome. We got it. But it wasn't cheap. Nice. And that kind of stuff exists and can be republished. It needs to be. And that's something that people need to have. I mean, why not have that on your bookshelf? Now, maybe it's not, it's probably not going to be a hardcover and stuff, because then obviously you have to pay more money for it, because that's just how that kind of stuff works. But still, just to have that in your library, it's so valuable. I can't speak highly enough for it. And I think, Dominic, this is an interesting point to it. I bet you would agree with me. As we see with the elections in Europe, things are changing. There is a shift. Gen Z, the millennials and Gen Z are figuring things out. They're really starting to understand that our world is garbage and we don't like it. People want tradition. They want faith. They want practicality. And I'm telling you, they're going to want books. They're going to want books. I'm telling you, I think they are. I think they're going to go back to it. I think you're still going to have the internet. I'm not saying YouTube's going to be gone, but I really think that having that in your hand, it's coming. It's coming.
I think you're right, especially because they're recognizing with AI, especially the manipulative power. Right. Exactly.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And so that's exactly right. So everything online, now that AI gets bigger and bigger, and I'm telling you, within the next year, you're not going to know you're not going to know. We do a show like this. You're not going to know
talking to you.
Yeah, exactly. You're not. I could be an AI. Yeah. That's where we're going with the internet. And I think you're going to reach a point where people are like, okay, no, fine. Yeah. I'm done. I don't trust it.
I'm done.
They're stealing. They're already stealing. I'm not naive. I know that someone is watching our faces right now and stealing all of it. Right. I get that, but it's going to get worse and worse. And so I think people are going to go back to how it was: conversations in real life, books, etc., which is a bad thing for podcasters, but probably a good thing in the end, and good thing for book publishers, And I think that, but absolutely, I think it's great that you're doing that. So please, everyone go check that out, and that's on your Glorious Heritage website. Is that right?
So it'll be for now. It's going to be on the Maccabean Uprising one, but we will get the website up and running soon, and then we'll transfer everything over.
Perfect, and obviously you'll have those attached to this. It's a great thing doing a show with you. You do all the editing for it. That's why I do shows with Dominic, because they're interesting and he does the editing. that's how I'm about it. Give me a good show where I don't have to do the work too.
Well, Dominic. You mentioned your another baby's on the way, so you're a busy fella.
Yeah, going to be busier too. So the next couple of months, it's just kind of everyone who has kids, it's kind of increasingly getting, it's like the sharks, that you can hear the music in the background. It's coming for us. But no, it's right now. It's okay. We have time. But in August and September, it's probably going to be pretty tight. But we have a great team. I mean, we have such a fun group of people who provide content. It's just, again, it's amazing. It's amazing how it works. And I think, again, as I've said so many times, everyone don't ever think that you can't do something, you can't provide something. Again, go find these books, and maybe if it's a solid book, copy it and put it online. There's so many things that you can do that can help out other people who help other people learn the faith. And it doesn't have to be getting on a microphone or writing a book. Sometimes it literally is photocopying books.
You can do that. And in fact, we're going to be looking for people to do that as well. We're going to have a commission structure where we can teach you how to scan them and how to edit them, and then present it to us, and we'll give you I think it's 40% share in the profit of the book. So, so if you're interested, contact us, because we're still working out the numbers, but contact us. So email me. I'll put the email down here. So.
Awesome. Great. That sounds great. And that's exactly what we need. And let's do this together. Let's build it. We have this movement now that the vote gives me so much optimism that they're not all dark. It's not all bad. It's not the end of the world. We have a really stupid president, and a lot of things look really grim, but it's not over, and we can really fight this. We need to fight this. We have to fight this. And again, we're going to talk about this in an upcoming podcast that may be published before this one. Patriotism, it's a virtue. Love your country, fight for it. That's what we have to do. And you also have to like, subscribe, share, and comment on this video, because that's not it's some sort of a requirement. I don't know.
It is kind of a requirement.
Patriotism to the Catholic Family Podcast, I suppose.
There you go.
But no, we appreciate it, and go over and support all of Dominic's stuff. Go over to Maccabean Uprising, buy the books, go to Patreon, all that stuff. Support people who are doing their best to provide Catholic content. Dominic, as always, it's been a blast. I really appreciate it.
Awesome.
As always, I learned some stuff, and now I'm honestly going to go think about the Lateran Treaty after I do the to-dos that my wife has set up for me. So first the to-dos, and then the Lateran Treaty. So everybody, thanks for listening. Dominic, until next time, God bless you.